without further ado, I want to bring out our two first speakers. They're actually two very good friends of mine, so I'm very proud to have them here. Please help me welcome Stowe Boyd and Paul Greenberg.
Yes, I am the guy wearing the black turtleneck and the blue jeans, although that wasn't planned, actually. We're going to talk today about something that's absolutely essential to everybody here, leadership. It's a time of enormous change in the world, and nothing is more important, perhaps, to the success of business today than leadership. And so I'm going to start by doing something a little unusual. I've come up with 3 challenges relative to this topic, and then Paul and I are going to talk about what those implications lead to. And I think that these 3 rules form a power law. So I'm going to spend twice as much time talking about the first issue as the second, and twice as much about the second than the third, and I'm only going to take a few minutes. And I hope that will spark a lot of conversation. Paul and I have been talking for a couple of weeks. It's been great. So the first one is most important one, twice as important as the second. We're in a new economy. We're in a new world. And it really hasn't sunk through most places. A lot of business leaders, a lot of thinkers still think that the old economic principles apply, but they don't, because we're now in the post-normal. We're in a new era. It's not the industrial era anymore. It's post-normal. And normalcy is gone. Things have changed in profound ways. And it's not just that things have sped up. It's that when things speed up to the degree they have and become as complicated as they have, a bunch of things change. And the best way to characterize this is called VUCA, V-U-C-A, which is the increase in volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Now, these originally arose from research in the military, who is, of course, dealing with warfare. And the fog of war that Clausewitz wrote about is really what we're talking about. Everyone is confronted with that. Things are changing unpredictably. We don't know what is good or bad information. Economic systems are so interconnected now, we can't analyze the impacts of our efforts on them. And we can't effectively read the situation we're confronted with. I've got a quote from Denise Caron, which is why I have this computer. I don't want to misquote her. We are moving from a world of problems, which demands speed, analysis, and elimination of uncertainty, to a world of dilemmas, which demand patience, sense-making, and an engagement of uncertainty. Now, these are not characteristics of old leadership, but they have to become the key characteristics of new leadership. And so learning how to lead in the post-normal is now leadership's first job. The second thing, the social web has come and obliterated a tremendous number of things that we took for granted in the past. Media has changed. Entertainment is changing. Print journalism has completely changed. And now social is reaching into business and having the same kind of corrosive and at the same time amplification effect inside of the business world. It's changing everything. But some people have overgeneralized that to mean that leadership today now starts to mean driving great number of followers in a social sense. And I think that's wrong. And we'll get a chance to talk about this at length. John Holt countered that idea by saying the following: leaders are people who go their own way without caring or even looking to see whether anyone is following them. Leadership qualities are not the qualities that enable people to attract followers, but those that enable them to do without them. Now, I'm saying that as a guy with a black turtleneck and blue jeans. So think about Jobs as a great example of that. So this is actually the opposite, as he said, John Holt said, this is the opposite of charisma that everyone talks about. The last thing I want to talk about as a impetus for this conversation, the third factor, the 3D workforce. distributed, decentralized, and discontinuous. We're in a time now where it's a work anywhere with anyone at any time kind of world. And both companies and workers, employees, are internalizing that to a great extent. And as a result, or as a corresponding or a third dimension, a fourth dimension of that, is a fourth D. They're growing disaffection of the workforce. Some of the numbers are terrifying. I'll talk about this later. But the most important thing to say is that businesses are confronted with growing numbers of uninvolved workers, many who've lost faith in their companies, particularly since 2008. One research survey I saw showed disaffection dropping, trust in the business dropping from something like 75% on average in 2007 by workers to about 30% in 2011. An enormous swing. And so this is an enormous challenge for leadership, because if you have a large, disconnected group of workers, it's very difficult to make things happen. So that's setting the stage.
So one of the things that you have to begin to look at, given what Stowe just described with VUCA, and also the loss of faith that you're seeing, and the fact that the bulk of what still exists is command and control kind of hierarchies, is what are the qualities of leadership and how they changed, and what are the things you have to do at the companies in order to get some business value from them. Because look, I mean, because we're all human beings, we all have a real sense of what we want out of life, right? We want to be happy. We want to have a fulfilling life that is very different than the next person's. Part of that's going to be work. Part of the job of a leader is to figure out, okay, I have to be able to support that, but I have business objectives I have to meet, which are very different than the objectives of the individuals who both work for me and who buy from me. And that's another really important part of this. So, I mean, we only have a limited amount of time here, so I'm going to concentrate for right now, and then we go to the meat of the discussion, but on three areas in particular that a leader has to either have or create. One is vision. I mean, but it's not the vision of the past. I mean, that's one of the things that the old vision of the past is gone. And I'm going to give you the new vision, and then I'll counter it and show you what the old vision was. Jeff Bezos of Amazon has a discussion that he had, I think it was in Fast Company, where he said why they felt that Amazon was successful. And he said, it's because we live on this. We're stubborn on the vision and flexible on the details, right? And the old vision was stubborn on the vision and stubborn on the details, right? And we can get into that in the discussion if it happens to go that way.
Paul, this is very interesting, because I have lifted from a number of people who've used this phrase in the past, the notion of strong ideas weakly held. So the idea is that you espouse them, you want them to be tested by interaction with people, but they may not be absolutely true, and then you'd have to be willing to let go.
Well, no, I mean, that's exactly it. I mean, look, the world's changing constantly, as Stowe pointed out. In fact, another aspect of Amazon, which is really important, is they hire to two very specific characteristics. One is that they have to have the employee has to have a bias to action, but the other one is that they have to be able to work through ambiguity, and that's actually an employment requirement for Amazon. So they understand how the world's changing. But we can look at another example of a CEO who actually gets all of this, and that's Benioff over at Salesforce, Mark Benioff. I mean, think about the way he operates when it comes to his vision. He's been, I'll tell you a story. Back in 2002, I was writing the third edition of CRM Speed Light, which is the book I've written, and I was interviewing Teen Sue. It was really more of a discussion, who was the chief strategy officer of Salesforce at the time. And I said, so what's Salesforce's future going to look like? He said, we want to be the foundation upon which all business applications are run. Now keep in mind, at that time, they were known for Salesforce automation, period. But we want to be the foundation upon which all business applications are run. Now, I want you to think about this. He has never, for 1 second, wavered from that vision. But he's changed the details continually. At one point, it was build a force platform. It was technology driven. Now it's burrow into the DNA and create social businesses. But ultimately, you're running on him. And that's the way the Salesforce is looked at. But the visionary aspect of it isn't just the old vision of we present to the world and leave it at that. He needs buy-in. So what he does is Benioff actually presents a vision that actually is something that if you listen to it, you could say, I could do that. I could be part of that. And that part of that is why he's able to do another thing which relates directly to that vision, which has direct business implications. One is, he will, when you hear him present at Dreamforce or one of his conferences, he literally will say, here's what we're doing, here's our technology, here's what our ecosystem, et cetera. 75% of that doesn't exist yet. He's presenting the future as the present, and he presents it as the present. But because his employees have bought in, he spent the time to get them to buy into his vision, his employees do what he expects, which is to catch up. And as soon as they catch up, he's on to the next phase of that vision.
I think it's fascinating that when I was talking about my 3 factors, the things that should be the new skills of leaders in the new day, 2 of the people I quoted referred to patience, which is not typically a characteristic that you would associate with old autocratic style leadership. However, when you think of people like Benioff and others who have that vision but are relaxed on details, being relaxed on the details is, again, a reflection of that, having the patience for your team, your company, to be able to fill in the details and be able to wait for them to figure it out and make it happen.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's fascinating at that level, but you look at some of these mega giant companies like an IBM or a Salesforce or an Amazon, and all of them are willing to take the long view, take the time, educate the employees, do what they have to do. In fact, empower employees is one of the other aspects that a leader actually has to take care of. Look, if you remember, like back in the days of traditional business, one of the things that small businesses always had difficulty with when they were growing big was actually the entrepreneur would have a hard time letting go of ownership and letting go of every detail of the company. And it actually prevented them from growing at all, right? They would tend to fail if they couldn't do that, if they couldn't delegate. Now we're talking about companies like IBM, which have 400,000 employees, empowering all the employees, right, to actually collaborate with them on getting the business to move forward. So they have a program called Blue IQ, which they developed about a year and a half ago, I think 2011. And originally the idea was, we got salespeople, we got 16,000 of those, and they're really tight people, and they don't let go of their network, and they don't want to talk to their other salespeople. We got to break that kind of silo. And what the idea of the program was, let's empower them to utilize social media and and mentor them about it, to teach them on the technologies, teach them on the culture, which is really important to this, to teach them, educate them, and do all of these things, spend the time, and they had a whole group of people for that only, to break down those silos. This thing went viral at the company to the point now it's available to all 400,000 people. But the purpose of it is so that you can talk to customers and you're empowered to take action with customers. Now, I want you to think about something. IBM, 400,000 employees, $100 billion organization, being willing to make the cultural change to actually say, we trust you, employees, to actually take responsibility, and that's the other aspect, because you're accountable once you're trusted, take responsibility to go and talk to our customers.
I think it's fascinating to contrast that with one of the more interesting companies of the present day, a relatively young entrant, which is Valve, the gaming company, which is the company in the world that has the highest profit per employee of any company. And they have a zero leadership model, zero management model. And what they've done is basically distributed leadership to everyone. So, for example, people can be hired there convince a group of people to work on a project that they've dreamed up without any other approval, build it, and take it to market without anyone ever being asked if I can do this or not. That's a phenomenal step beyond empowerment to the notion of leadership. Everyone can be a leader in that business. They take it to the point where you should read the employee manual. How many people have read the employee manual of Valve? It should be read by everyone. It's astonishing. They have a concept called flatland. This is what they call it, where you're hired there and you don't have a manager. You arrive at work, there's no one to take care of you. You've got to figure it out. You've got to wander around, bump into people, find interesting projects to work on. It's astonishing. And the fact that it makes huge profits should be an inspiration to us. But here's my projection. Management will continue to do things that don't work because they're unwilling to adopt practices they do not understand.
I mean, you know, that is the nature of command and control. And the thing is, look, make no mistake about it, command and control is by no means gone or even terribly threatened at the moment, although they are feeling the pressure. I highly recommend that if you get an opportunity, everybody get a chance and download this study. It's called Leading Through Connections. It's IBM's Institute for Business Value, which is a no-agenda research organization. It's their 2012 CEO report. Take a look at it, because one of the things that in their 2010 report and in their 2012 report, CEOs are becoming aware that for the next 3 to 5 years, that their primary imperatives are, number one, learning who their customer is, learning more about their customer and staying closer to their customer. And number two is understanding how to utilize their own resources in effect. I mean, I'm agglomerating a whole number of characteristics here. Learning how to utilize their own resources to actually build that connectedness out. So collaboration, the cultures of collaboration. Now, one of the things that leads to, and it's another characteristic, is transparency. I mean, look, in the past, everyone was afraid to open up on anything. I mean, now you have, let's say on the customer side, you see companies like Samsung collaborating with their customers on advisory councils and giving them IP of their future to show them things. Procter & Gamble with Connect and Develop saying, hey, we will co-create with you, and you will help us solve problems. We will open up our IP. But there's the other side, which is the transparency of the company's actual day-to-day interactions. There's a company in Sweden which has been voted the most trusted company in Europe for several years running, called Sandvik. Now, from the nature of it, when you hear what it does, it's kind of boring. It's literally a mining and manufacturing company. Mining manufacturing equipment company, and it does a lot of other things, piping and tubing. But what they do is they have a ethical policy that every employee actually adheres to, and everybody that they deal with adheres to, called the power of Sandvik. And it literally, they open up everything. So, for example, if you want to find out the bonuses that the executives did or didn't get, and for what reasons, you could literally, as a stranger, go online and get them information.
I'm going to take our last 10 seconds to try to pull a thing that comes across. Okay. Leaders today have to have the courage to try things that may make them uncomfortable. They need to continue to learn from other examples of companies that may not be the one that they bump into at the golf course or that they went to college with. They need to take a long, hard look at what they're doing internally and not just continue to perpetuate decisions that were made in the past. Thanks very much.
Thank you.